7 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, or roll call. I started out
Mr.
good.
Cameron.
Present.
Mr. Bowman.
Here.
Ms. Kelly. Here. Mr. Beazle is absent. Mr. Peterman.
Here.
Mr. Slaughter.
Here.
Okay, pledge to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Cool. Thank you. Entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of the August 21st meeting.
I would move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cameron.
Aye.
Mr. Bowman.
Aye.
Ms. Kelly. Aye. Mr. Peterman.
Aye.
Mr. Slaughter.
Aye.
All right, this is the point of visitors and communication. Do any communications too?
No.
All right. Would any visitors like to address council on any matter tonight?
We would.
Please,
You mean, I thought it would be under new business though.
no, if you have something to address council, go ahead and come up now and state your name and address and let us know what you'd like to chat about.
Oh, okay. I'm Peggy Lauer, this is Herman Lauer, we live at 155 Capri.
Okay.
And we were wondering if there's anything the city can help us do about the deer problem. Because they're really becoming a danger, the house problem. And, we don't have 3 acres to let people go hunting on. So we were wondering if there's anything that could be changed so that could maybe become less of a problem.
Very new business about it. We have a little over an acre lot in the woods, and the woods that we have behind us, there's just, one day I was down, I counted 17 of them.
Oh, wow.
So they use that as a path to go over Memorial Parkway and down. And they're just not scared.
Yeah.
They run through the yards, the front yards, you could be standing outside and you have to watch it because you might get run over by them. They just go charging through the yards.
Do you have any other neighbors close by with a lot of acreage that you could join with?
We asked them, the one neighbor next door, he'll go to his farm to go hunting.
Okay,
The lady next to him works at the zoo, so she's not very,
I understand.
so,
What about anybody else within the, as you said, they travel through your
Yes.
property? Do you know of any other people within that traveling area that might be interested or willing to allow?
well, on the
Hunting.
other side of our property is the conservancy,
Okay,
so we're kind of stuck.
Right. Well, the other lots on Ross,
They're on Rosemont, they back up to
they're
Rosemont.
not real deep, but the 3 acres has a good lot.
yeah.
But, I mean, I just don't know if they're,
I mean, they won't move when you get, I mean, if you wanna leave your house, they're in your driveway and they're eating everything, even things they never touched before.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
This might be a good segue into, I mean, on that topic, I know that there's recently been success across the river with a sterilization program where the numbers are going down. It's proven to work. And so we haven't, gone there, but I think we maybe,
I know they talked
Sure.
about that years ago when they first started
Right,
having the
and-
problem, but I thought it was too expensive.
well, it could be revenue neutral. There's another discussion for another time, but it could be done with no cost to the city at all, with some, citizens and vets that are willing to step up. So we haven't started the discussion yet, but I'm hoping we go there.
Yeah, because I mean, one almost bit my grandson last week,
watch
and,
it, yeah.
I mean, the deer ticks are supposed to be really bad this year, so, I mean, we're just at a loss of what else to do.
Right.
and there's some pretty big bucks. I mean, they're.
Yeah, there was a 10-point buck, fighting in my backyard one day with another buck, so, it's just kind of scary to even go out in the yard.
Right.
And the bucks will charge you. So, I mean, I was.
Yeah, when
wondering
they
about
have
that.
babies, I mean, we don't even know where they're hiding them. And if you walk near them, then you got one charging at you.
Yeah.
So I can't even enjoy my home.
Usually there'd be 1, now there's 3. I mean, there's 3 fawns. I mean, they're just more and more
Right.
as a group. And we just didn't know, what is it if deer do charge you? Do you have a right to defend yourself to shoot?
naturally.
what
Oh,
do
you mean with a firearm?
Well, it's getting scary, I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
I'm close enough to a 2x4.
I assume
I'm getting
not.
close.
I don't think the castle law applies to animals, and you can't discharge a firearm in the city
You cannot,
regardless.
even if
You
it,
cannot.
okay, but you can take a 2x4 and smack it across the head.
That's how close we can get to
Is
them.
that, I mean, I don't know.
If it's
Okay.
charging you, I guess that would be
Okay.
considered reasonable, eh?
Okay.
But I don't wanna have to walk around with a 2x4.
Well, I'm just saying, it's getting bad, and I
Yeah.
don't know if there's anything being done about it, or talked. Yeah.
So Ron, are Fish and Wildlife gonna come this fall and speak with council?
Yes, actually, they are scheduled with the city administrators group at our next meeting in October, and we are hosting that meeting.
Okay.
So we do have Fish and Wildlife speaking to that group about urban deer management. And obviously the discussion will in part look at exploring options of what other people are doing in different areas. That type of conversation will come out of that. But, that meeting's scheduled for the first week in October.
It will be interesting to see if some of the methods that we talked about 5-6 years ago are now being more successful other places around the country.
Right.
Right in
And,
Clifton, there.
and I do know locally,
success.
you know, there's a continuation of conversation in other jurisdictions. And there was actually an effort recently in Fort Mitchell, and they chose not to make any changes that would allow that type of activity in their city. So, not sure, it's obviously an issue in a lot of communities. Some are choosing not to address it the way that Fort Thomas has even,
So does the acreage have to touch each other, or is it a total of 3 acres within a mile? How does that work?
Contiguous.
Yes,
right,
Yeah, because,
Yeah, we're stuck, because those neighbors are speeding them too,
yeah, well,
which I think is making them.
Now, that's not,
I
that's,
know, but I heard that they can't enforce that,
so,
so not feeding them.
why can't we not
you
enforce
actually
not
have to
feeding?
do it, don't you?
I'm sorry.
Well, you have
Fish
to
and
prove they're not
Wildlife
feeding
will not
squirrels
allow
and then the deer are
food
getting
to
into it.
regulate that.
Right.
We just-
It's gonna be tough to do.
Oh, okay. So we have to work on that.
Okay,
Well-
I'm just curious if anybody's been, I know it's been a couple of years, but it just seems like it is getting worse.
Yeah, we have had people asking about it, and yeah, we brought this up a couple of months ago, and Ron did mention Fish and Wildlife's gonna be here. So that'll be a good opportunity for us to see what's the latest and greatest, and if there's something out there that's working better than what we have, and we can certainly look at that then.
Can we come to that meeting and hear what they have to say, or?
I don't know what it is.
Well, I mean, it's an association meeting.
Okay.
Okay, okay, I didn't know, I'm hearing impaired, so I didn't catch everything you were
I
saying.
understand. That's, no, it's an association meeting of local city officials.
Okay.
Probably not an open public meeting, but we
Okay.
can certainly relay the information.
That would
The
be great.
conversation will center around, the state has looked at doing kind of a model ordinance that would allow communities to not have to reinvent the wheel and work off of existing, you know, format for guidelines for a local ordinance. The discussion will center around what options are out there and maybe some of the funding mechanisms that people have used to do management of deer issues in their community. It's really more of an informational meeting, but hopefully we'll gain some of that information that we can share and discuss with council.
Okay,
I must say, though, that I really appreciate you all coming here. We do need this input. You know, obviously you have to react to information, and there's not, you know, good information really available. At one time, we did surveys, you know, flyover C, what was happening with the deer population. I personally didn't consider those to be very reliable. So it's really just based on citizen input, more or less. The other thing that we do know, though, is the number of auto accidents. And to my surprise, after all this time, they really have not gone down. If I remember right, they average about 20 a year in this city.
So I know they
Which is
gave
a
out
big problem.
Deer tags last year, was there a lot of them taken out? I mean, was there a lot of deer
they don't
taken
get
last year?
all.
They don't have to
No.
report by city, you report by county.
That count, okay, I was just, okay.
Yeah, our neighbors across the street would like to
We have
help
hunters
us
on the
get
street.
rid of them,
We have hunters that go out and
but
hunt.
they don't,
Yeah.
you know, if you count the street, yeah, they run with us, but, you know,
There's none,
as far as land, but, you know, we we don't have the 3 acres.
Well, in the meantime, the only other suggestion I would have is if you know where they're coming from or where they're going to, and if you know if there's other property owners
Yeah.
that would like to participate, maybe they don't know about the program, that might be the only solution until we review what other options are out there.
Yeah, so we're landlocked as far as that,
Yeah.
because we know on either side of us, we can't do anything.
Okay.
So, we tried, but
Yep.
it's not working.
Well,
That's
thank,
why you're the applicant continuance, because
right,
the
right.
neighbors across the street are having just as many problems. They're just coming out of our woods, so,
All right. Well, thanks for bringing it to our attention. Appreciate it.
thank you.
Anyone else like to address council? If not, we'll move ahead to reports of officers. City administrators report. Go for it, Ron.
Okay, I just had a couple of update items. We had visitors at our last meeting regarding the ordinance involving, housing of chickens. We have scheduled that meeting for all liquor license before our next council meeting, so that'll be at 6:15. We have had communication from some of the parties involved in that, so they've been made aware of that meeting date and time. Staff is working on research and information that we'll obviously put into some form and share with that committee and council subsequent to that. So that's where that issue is. We also had visitor last meeting regarding traffic issues on Holiday Lane, and some correspondence follow-up that was in the council packet regarding Summit Avenue. We're doing research on those with looking at our past speed studies. We'll commission a new speed study. I did have conversation with CT Engineers, our consultant, and their traffic engineer, looking at more of a broad picture of what all that means. Because some of the conversation came up about speed limits and placing of additional stop signs, those types of issues. And so I'm kind of leaning toward them giving us maybe a written report in addition to the specific items that have been brought forward, but also addressing it more in a broad brush, kind of philosophical sense, if you will, about how cities manage speed in their communities and how they innovate and what best practices are from an engineering standpoint. So hopefully that report will be available at our next meeting. If not, it'll be the October meeting.
From CT?
Yes.
With an evaluation?
Yes. And in your packets, you had information from UPS regarding golf cart delivery. That was a new request or informational letter from them stating that they're going to utilize that as a service delivery. I have had an opportunity to have conversation with the officials from UPS. And what it comes down to is it's a very seasonal operation at their highest peak usage time, which is November, December. It's a program that has been instituted in neighboring states for a period of time. In Kentucky, in the last legislative session, there was an amendment to the KRS statute that essentially allowed them to do operation for commercial purposes. Before that legislation was passed, they would have had to comply with each individual community's standards if they had adopted ordinances that regulated. And that obviously was, from a managing standpoint, was very difficult for them. But with new statute, it allows them the right to do so. It only affords the local jurisdiction the ability to address certain items, and it's very specific. There's a couple of items, including time of day of operation. So for example, from sunrise to sunset, that type of thing. Continuing with the conversation with them specifically, and I can go as detailed as you want or not, but the issue really involves them setting up a program where they accept delivery in the city at certain locations, and they utilize the golf cart for delivery because it's a simpler method. It makes it in smaller loads. They do it during the day. They don't have trucks driving on local residential streets. They can do it with golf carts. They try to employ local individuals for seasonal help. They try to work with cities or churches for the storage of the delivery for the day. So they actually bring the delivery in a regular truck that would come to your house, and they drop it at this location, and all that material is delivered that day. And then they store the vehicle in that same storage bin or garage or wherever it is that they work from.
Cool.
So that's essentially how that operates.
More like a gator than a golf cart, I can't.
No,
If
it'd
it
be-
snowed, you'd be.
They enclose them like you do a golf cart. I mean, it's a regular golf cart. And so
It's
they-
got the bag of clubs on the back and everything. So as soon as he's done delivering, he's out
Only
to
if
the
you
golf
ordered
course.
golf clubs does it have the bag.
Yeah, right.
But no, they have the fold down trays, and they take the example they gave. They may have 100 deliveries in a service area, and they would have an assistant that would package that location, and they may take 10 or 15 deliveries and then
Yeah.
come back and reload it and then go again.
And
into
they'd be
that
on the
neighborhood area.
main city streets.
Well,
and
they look
not
at
just the
density, it's
city.
based off of density, so they look at subdivision areas and, for example, if you took any larger subdivision in the community, if you took Summit or Scenic View or
Mhm.
Riverside Parkway area and you worked out of there, then
Yeah.
they would do all those deliveries to that location with that vehicle. And again, it's seasonal, it's about an eight week operation in November and December, and then they pull it back and they don't have that same need.
So they need a little individual hub for each subdivision. They wouldn't go
Right.
down North Fort Thomas Avenue to get from
Right,
one to the other.
that's correct.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, and you don't have to worry about it. It's not like
Oh, I know,
next
but
year they're gonna ask for drones to deliver or something. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, maybe that will come. I guess Amazon's doing the drones,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
There hasn't been a lot of discussion out there. Obviously, if you start seeing golf carts in our community, they'll be marked. Their employees are marked. They actually have a vest with the marking on it. But it might prompt, the discussion about that topic in
Yeah.
general, and that's probably something the council may want to address. I
So
don't think
we
that-
don't need to do anything ordinance.
I don't think there's a need to really address it with local ordinance at this point, just for this function.
So does that mean that people can have golf carts
It
and
does
ride
not.
through the city?
Does not.
And that's specific in the KRS statute?
Yes. The exemption is very specific to commercial use.
Okay. But if you wear a brown uniform, maybe you can get
They
by
don't
with
wear
it.
brown
Okay,
uniforms.
okay.
Yeah, they're taking applications there, in case you want to drive a golf cart.
Sounds like fun to me. All right. Anything
So
else?
that is the current information on the golf cart issue. Just a couple of other quick things. The visioning process, all the committees are scheduled to meet in the next 2 weeks for their initial meeting for organization. Our kickoff meeting is confirmed, and we will be advertising that. We've had a lot of great input from residents stating that they want to be involved, so we have a master list. So anybody in the community that wants to be involved in the process can just contact city offices. We've had a lot of that type of contact and input. So we have a master list, and we'll be emailing all those individuals notifications as we move forward. And obviously, we'll try to obtain that same information from anybody that comes to that first meeting. And that's 7 o'clock on, what was the date? 25th. September 25th at 7 o'clock in this room.
I'm sorry, it's a kickoff
Yep.
meeting for all the,
For the entire process, right?
and who should they, is there somebody they should speak to particularly if they want to volunteer?
Me,
Okay.
yes. They can email me, any of the
Okay.
staff, really, but it'll get channeled through me to the consulting team.
Good.
So,
And the only other thing I had to report, just an update, we've had a continuing dialogue with the school officials and some of the individual property owners in and around Moyer Elementary. And it has to do with just a lot of the changes in traffic pattern and parking and circulation that occurs around the school. I know the police department and both our safety departments meet every year with the school officials. Sometimes you don't know until people start doing things a certain way. And people will find a method to accomplish what they want to do, whether it's dropping off, picking up, and they settle into that routine. And we've had kind of that time period since school started over the last 3 weeks, where everybody's kind of found their way to the locations they see fit. It has created some issues. We put no on-street parking on James Avenue at the outset, but we are working with some of the other surrounding streets involving maybe extending the distances for no parking at certain times of day because of the congestion that's created at intersections coming off residential streets. Some of the turnaround locations that they've kind of discovered as part of the process. So we are working with them. We may make some temporary changes, but if you hear a conversation, that's really the issues that we're dealing
The
with.
family at the corner communicated with, or you make them
Yes.
happy and it's all good?
Yes, I met with them, and they had an issue with off-street parking because we eliminated the parking on James.
Right.
So we worked out a solution for them. So
What
they're
about
good.
striping? Has that been able to be
We
done?
are going to
yet?
do additional striping within the next couple of weeks around Moyer, because we've had requests about the stalls on street, because if they park in one, they take two, because there's such short distances between driveways. So we'll be marking those locations as well. So it's a little bit of an evolution of discovery of where the issues are and what the best method for addressing them. But most everything that we will move forward with is temporary just through the construction period, which would be this school year, and then they'll be removed back to where we started.
I've had a few requests from people in that area for garbage cans too. And garbage just is, there's no place for it. So I don't know if that's something that we could entertain or not, to, find around the corner of James or somewhere to plop a city can. Because it seems to end up any place but where it should.
You're talking about littering.
Littering,
Yes.
garbage,
Okay.
yeah. Just
Yeah,
a-
I'm sure we can okay
A spot for a
additional
can.
cans in that area. Yeah,
Um,
we can definitely look into that.
That would be great.
Okay, that's all I had, unless anybody had questions on anything.
All right, thanks, Ron. Is there old business? New business? Finance Committee report on disbursements.
Report of disbursements, August 22nd through August 31st, 2017. General fund, $148,371.59. Public Works KDOT fund, $7,391.50. Reoccurring debt service fund, $1,140.88. CPD revitalization, $1,684.05. Police and Fire Pension Fund, $1,871.23. Total, $160,459.25. We, the undersigned members of the Finance Committee, recommend that warrants number 2569 through 2639 be approved and the treasurer be authorized to issue checks for their payment. Mr. Peterman, chairperson, Ms. Kelly, member.
Entertain a motion.
I'll move to concur in the recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cameron.
Aye.
Mr. Bowman.
Aye.
Ms. Kelly. Mr. Peterman.
Aye.
Mr. Slaughter.
Aye.
Okay, we're down to ordinance resolutions and orders. Do we want to do a preface to this tax rate ordinance based on the memo that Joe created and the date change?
To Mr. E. Walsh.
You want to give us a little background on what we're doing here?
Yes, simply put, it's the same as in previous years. We received our updated assessments from the Campbell County PVA in approximately the end of July. However, some issues, they were slightly incorrect. They've had a couple of system changes down there, so we received the completely, really, truly updated numbers from the PVA a little later, really the first week of August. Went through all of the usual tax rate calculations using both our internal spreadsheets and the ad districts spreadsheets. And as it is in the past, those of you who've been here for a while are familiar with it. Obviously, everything is set forth by state statute, specifically since the enactment of House Bill 44. So our assessments increased again. However, they did not increase enough to really break the tax rate even, so to speak. So as a result, we end up with approximately 10 cent per thousand increase for the tax rate, which actually ends up being I believe it's a 2.3% tax rate increase. And let's see, 2.3% tax rate increase, and our 2.49%, and our property values only went up about 2.3%. We're not quite up for reassessment just yet. I think we're a couple years out from that. We have been reassessed since I've been here, and even the reassessment, oddly enough, In years past, we've had large enough reassessments that the tax rate has gone down or not changed. The previous one, I believe the tax rate went up by only 6 cents per thousand as opposed to our normal 10 to 12 cents per thousand. So I haven't seen a decrease in tax rates since I've been here, much to my chagrin as the finance director. But that's what we're looking like this year. As the memo says, your average single-family home in Fort Thomas is about $216,000 a year. Obviously, with a 10 cent per thousand increase, we're looking at about a $21.60 increase for that average home. Obviously, more or less depending on what your personal assessment is. But that's really where we stand. So that does include the compensating rate plus 4%, which was set forth in the budget. And to my knowledge, the school district is also taking the compensating rate plus 4%. As far as my conversations with Andy Remlinger at the school board have indicated.
I didn't see any reference to personal property, automobiles and so on as far as the old versus the new.
Personal property for automobiles has remained the same since the rate was set.
Okay, so
It's
that's
0.3971
no proposal.
0.3971 per thousand. That was actually set, and I only know because I did some research on it one time. That was set at what the, if I'm not mistaken, the personal property tax rate was in 1983. That
Okay.
is the.
So we're not
upper-
talking about,
That is the upper limit on
That.
that. So that rate hasn't changed since the city of Fort Thomas enacted an automobile tax.
Okay.
But yeah, the personal property rate, the furniture and fixtures rate for the city of Fort Thomas, the stock and fixtures, inventory, such, we do levy that at the same rate
as the house.
as the real estate
Or the real
taxes,
estate.
yes. Yeah, it ends up, traditionally, it actually ends up being a little less than what the calculations show. I probably have them in front of me somewhere. Off the top of my head, that rate by calculation was about $2.20 per thousand, but it's easier to just leave it the same. Traditionally, we've done just that.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, questions for Joe?
Property values get reassessed by the county, Fort Thomas, all together at once periodically? Or
Is
is
it
it
every
sections?
4
I think it's
or 5?
Well, realistically, they do the whole thing every 5 years.
Yeah.
It is really what it boils down to. They do the entire thing. Now, are homes reassessed at various times? Sure. If there's
Whenever there's a sale or something like that, that gets adjusted.
Exactly.
But there is a cycle that PVA re-examines an entire city
Yes.
on, I think it's 5 years, I served on it
I think it's
twice
5 years.
on that board. And at that time, you can expect some changes, that it's gonna go up. Whenever our turn is next,
Well,
it should be soon.
that's why I ask. Are we like in an off year this time?
We are. And
It seems
really-
strange to me. It seems that property values have gone up and up and up and up.
And they have as a whole, the property values for the city have increased. But that's just on additions, deletions, sales, things of that nature. It increases a little bit every year, and that's pretty much a constant, but only on those reassessment years does it really increase.
But you also need to recognize that it's based on the valuation on January 1 of that year. So, and for example, anything in the sale of this year will not be assessed until January 1 of next.
It's not in the numbers yet.
Right.
So it's previous year's sales, and that increase was 2.3% valuation, which equated to 2.4%
2.4%.
increase in the tax rate.
So you haven't seen the
When they do their
full
5-year cycle, they get out the
impact
microscope.
of
They
that,
look at
yeah.
aerials.
Yeah.
The other thing I thought was interesting, Joe, the years where it actually did go down, one of them was 2010. How does that make sense? Right after the recession hit, it seems like everything was plummeting in that time frame.
It's just what the numbers look like when the PVA reassesses it. Yeah, it's strange that it would have been right after the recession, but that certainly was the case. The rate went down.
All right,
Well, I mean, that's to catch up, right, with increases that we have, because if it goes up exponentially and our 4% bump puts us beyond what we were allowed to collect by way of the new assessments, it then goes the other way.
right.
Because we've taken max the year before.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions?
The only other question I have on it is the relationship with the school board. There's they're under the same rules as far as compensating rate +4, but completely separated from us with the exception of collection.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
It's just a single bill that the city provides.
Right.
Yeah, they.
And it's about a 30-70 split. 70% of that is actually the school board's
Yes, the
taxes.
vast majority of the tax bill.
And 30%
goes
is
to
the city's taxes. Okay, got it.
Joe, do you know offhand how we compare to our peer cities in Northern Kentucky?
We're actually fairly comparable. Cities of this size, we're fairly comparable. Usually, I want to say there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 cities that we poll. I know we're in the upper part. I know we're in the upper half. But as far as neighboring cities go, you'd be surprised we're really quite comparable. We're actually lower than Southgate by a significant amount. A little higher than Newport, and somewhat comparable to the Belgians and Dayton as well.
As far as like the tax rate per I started selling real estate like 12 years ago when we were a hair under $15 per thousand. Now we're 12 years later, we're 19 and some change, soon to be 20, which is like that magic number that gets scary. But I mean, combined all those, little chips in our, with the trash collection just going up and the school board raising theirs too. I would like to see us find some kind of middle ground instead of going for the max every time personally. I don't know that we need to go for the full 4% increase in revenue on side. I would hope it could be revisited and have a conversation that might result in a little less of a hit. But that's just my voicing my position.
I feel like that's a conversation that could be had. There's two caveats to that always concern me, and that's health insurance and pension. And if we can get the health insurance and pension system solved, where we have a better forecasting capability on both, I think it would be easier for us to forecast what that's going to be. But in the past, the pension was always a concern, and so was medical insurance. So those two things are out there, but both of them are in the processes of being looked at to hopefully be fixed. So if in the future, if that happens in the next year or two, where we can do a better guesstimate of what medical increases are going to be and what pension increases are going to be for a period of time, then I think that's definitely a worthwhile conversation to have.
Well, that conversation would not be at this time of the year, though. I mean, we adopted a budget that was based
Right.
on this revenue
Sure.
estimate, so
Right.
we would want to have that conversation
Well,
before
nobody
we.
engaged anybody prior to this, though, to have a conversation about it before that was adopted?
No, we've had this conversation on the finance committee, and this exact thing, and that's one of the things that we talked about was the unknowns in medical and pension are the things that become the difficult thing for Joe to be able to forecast what's going to happen. But again, both of those things are being addressed. The state is addressing the pension system as we speak, or in the near future, and if the feds do something with a medical situation where we've got a better handle on it. But yes, that was part of the discussion, Ken.
So just to be clear about that, property taxes are only about a third of the revenue that it takes to run the city, right? Is that about right?
Give or take, yes.
About a third. The other two major taxes are insurance premium and occupational license fee. And, when we set the budget, there are estimates of the revenue generated by all those. And of course, the one very reliable source of revenue is the property tax, because
Right, it's fixed.
it's fixed, and so it's a very reliable source of revenue, easy to collect, pretty fair. And so we need to look at all, this in the context of all our sources of revenue and what the needs of the city are.
Right.
And that's a budget discussion. It's not an abstract. I mean, talking about taxes in the abstract of taxes shouldn't be this high, or, I mean, it just doesn't, it's out of context. We're trying to operate a city efficiently and provide the services that people want. And that's that's how you want to frame the issue. You don't want to just say, well, the tax rate is this and it should be that. That's,
Right.
that's just out of context.
Inflation this year is at like 1.25. And so, I mean, that's encouraging for everybody, that, you know, but I mean, we're going beyond what that is. I just, the entire time I've been involved in city government, I haven't seen our reserves go the wrong direction. And so, I mean, we've been doing well fiscally, you know, in my, whatever it's been, 6 years, whatever. But anyhow, I just.
No, I don't disagree with that. And I'm just making the point that taxes aren't something that are just collected for fun, right? They're collected to fund the cost of having the types of services that we have, and they
Right.
ought to be discussed in that context, and also in the context of the other sources of revenue that we have, and are those rates appropriate? I mean, if the thought is that, you know, there is more revenue that's being generated than is necessary to fund the services people want, then we would look at all sources of revenue, not just the property tax. I mean, that's the only point I'm making, is it has to be a discussion of revenue and expenses at the same time, not just, you know, this tax rate or that tax rate as a separate, you know, abstract sort of issue.
So bottom line, we've got a 2.5% increase, right, for the city. Is it the
4%
same?
of revenue.
Sorry?
I mean, it's gonna generate a 4% revenue increase.
Well, it's a
right?
2.5% increase in the taxes
To, yeah.
to the
To
individual.
result.
I mean, I think the best number is it's $21 a year for the average homeowner. I mean,
I
that's
mean, that makes
something,
four
that's a number
hours,
somebody
but I
can
mean,
relate
every-
to.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Well, and
number.
that's where I'm headed, so
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
$21.
yeah.
What's the school board's piece?
The school board's piece, I mean, we'll be over $15 per thousand this year. So if we're sitting before, the school board's sitting at about 11, so you can.
So we're at 32. And then, do we know numbers yet on Rumpke and whatever?
We have those.
Yes.
Yeah, we're looking at Rumpke ends up being about $158 per unit is what it is. It was $157.92, I believe. I have the calculations. So it would be set at $158.
What's the increase?
The increase is
$5.66.
$35, correct? It's
Yeah, I thought it was on the
Right.
it's 123 to 158.
So we're about $37 increase on average. Is that right?
All adds up.
Per 100,000.
Right. Okay.
Any other discussion? All right, so read the ordinance, please.
This is a summary of ordinance number 009, 2017, an ordinance providing for the imposition, levy, collection, and apportionment of the taxes of the city of Fort Thomas, Campbell County, Kentucky, for the 2017 fiscal year and fixing the tax rate. For 2017, there is imposed as taxes of the city the sum of $4.12 per each, .412 upon each 100 valuation of real property, .412 upon each $100 valuation of personal property and mixed property, and .3971 upon each $100 valuation of motor vehicles subject to taxation within the city limits, and .412 upon each 100 valuation of all franchise valuations to be used for defraying the current and incidental expenses of city government. The taxes shall be due and payable at the city building or P.O. Box 639115, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45263-9115, on the date the ordinance becomes effective. All bills not paid or postmarked by October 31st, 2017 shall be delinquent, and a penalty of 5% of the amount of the total bill shall be added. The city treasurer shall collect the bills with said 5% penalty added and interest at the rate of 8% per annum until paid on the amount of the tax and waste fee. The city clerk shall add an additional penalty of 10% of the amount of the unpaid total bill on January 1st, 2018. The city treasurer shall then proceed to collect the bills with a total penalty of 15% and interest from November 1st, 2017. In the event that a delinquent tax bill is referred to the city attorney for collection, legal action will be initiated to collect the delinquent tax, interest, and penalty levied thereof, and the cost and fees associated. The city of Fort Thomas has a lien upon the property assessed for the tax and waste fees and all penalties, interest fees, commission charges, and other expenses, including court costs and attorney fees.
All right, that's first reading. Now we have a resolution RO5, 2017.
Resolution number RO5, 2017, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Fort Thomas, Kentucky, authorizing the mayor to enter into an interlocal agreement with the City of Southgate, Kentucky, for the maintenance of sidewalks along US 27.
Okay. Go ahead.
I just want to make one comment on that resolution. At our last meeting, you received a copy of the interlocal agreement. We actually voted on that. We do need to vote on the resolution authorizing the mayor to sign, but I did want to make one note of change in the one that was voted on last time. And by action of the resolution, you will adopt it in this form. But there were two addresses added, and that's 6 Custis Avenue and 1150 Highland Avenue. When we discussed it last month, it included the block from Highland Avenue basically to the Fort Thomas Plaza. The two addresses I referenced is actually the next block north, which would be Highland Avenue north to Custis, which is the corporation limit on the north side. And Southgate had repaired and actually replaced that entire frontage within the last 3 years, and really should be included in the interlocal agreement. It has the same exact circumstances where they were within the limits of Southgate, but the frontages are Fort Thomas addresses.
Yeah, but they did it before.
They're all new now, so.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about it for a while. Okay.
So those two addresses were added, and so the actual attachment to this resolution reflects that. So.
I'll entertain a motion on that one.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
A roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cameron.
Aye.
Mr. Bowman.
Aye.
Ms. Kelly. Aye. Mr. Peterman.
Aye.
Mr. Slaughter.
Aye.
Okay, we have another resolution, RO6, 2017, CERS separation.
I really don't have anything to read on this one. It's just resolution RO6, 2017, City of Fort Thomas, Kentucky.
I thought there was the same. Or it wasn't? Yeah, draft, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure,
there's
you
the
read the
entire
whole
ordinance,
thing.
or the entire resolution. Let me comment on that first of all, and just preface that. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion that's been generated from dating back to the last General Assembly regarding the issue of pension, and specifically the separation bill, which was the 226, I believe it was, that was up and for consideration and then pulled from consideration for vote, with the idea that it would be part of the reform and special session called in this fall. We've worked closely with KLC, and obviously they represent city governments, city county governments. They've done a number of forums, and we've been in attendance at those forums. And really, we can get into a lot of discussion if you would like on the issue, but staff is recommending adoption of this resolution, and it really calls for a continuation of support for the separation bill. And quite frankly, the CERS pension system, independent of the umbrella of KERS, does not have the same issues. It's independently funded, meaning that the employees and the cities and or counties are the contributors to that pension system. Independent, there's no state funding that supports those. This separation concept that was in a bill and is being pushed as part of this session really identifies it as a separate entity, self-supporting, outside the realm of I guess, crisis that's being discussed within the entire retirement system throughout the state. So I think the cities are in a position where they can make the statement that in their best interest, and this is the staff's position, is that it's in the city's best interest to honor the pension system the way it's been presented to the employees of our cities, and to control the costs associated with providing that through separation from the KERS. And again, the funding mechanism is the cities, and their employees, or the counties and their employees supporting this pension system. And it's not in the best interest of the city to allow the other indebtedness to be burdened by this system. So that's kind of as concise as I can be about the thing.
So Joe and other bean counter number cruncher people think that this is a good idea to do this separation. It's not gonna come back and bite us in the butt, that we
Absolutely.
can't meet our obligation.
Right. And we've met our obligation. That is the point. The cities and counties, you know, when they do an actuarial study and they determine what the method of funding is necessary, the cities have always matched that. The state has not met their obligation through the General Assembly for whatever reasons. You know, they've chosen to put money in different locations, and so it is underfunded. But the cities and counties and their employees have always contributed at the levels that have been recommended and would continue to do so. Separating it gives the cities and counties and their governments the opportunity to control the cost and build the pension system so that it does support, you know, what it's intended to support in terms of pension.
So, just as background, I don't know how many of y'all have been involved with this pension stuff over the time, or people in the audience, but, you know, all cities and counties in Kentucky and special districts are part of one pension system. We all pay them out. We're told them out to pay every year, and that's what we do. It's all one big pool. This resolution is actually playing in the margins a little bit. It's not a life or death kind of thing. It just should, you know, for investment purposes and a lot of management purposes, should these funds be combined or should they be separate? This fund is much better funded than the state fund, and arguably almost up to what it should be. And there's not a question of that being taken to fund the unfunded part of the state. It's just sort of the investment management aspect of it. But, you know, KCO and the League of Cities and all these groups are supporting this, so, you know, I think it makes sense. One question I do have, Joe, though, so they changed the actuarial assumptions.
Correct.
And I know cities, I've talked to some other cities, I haven't talked to you, but are facing potentially some major increases in their pension contributions.
You're looking at an increase on the non-hazardous side, the contribution percentage from approximately, I think we're 18.5 right now, 18.55. That's potentially going up 10%. We're looking at 28, 29% contribution for non-hazardous employees. And last I heard, we're looking at an increase for hazardous employees from the 31.5% that we're paying right now, and upwards of 34%. So it'd be a significant increase. Actually, just by my rough numbers, we're looking $500,000-$600,000 additionally to the city of Fort Thomas. I've talked to some other surrounding cities. Newport's looking at about a $1.2 million increase. We're talking under the current system with what they're looking at, some staggering numbers. And to put it in perspective, you know, we talk about tax increases. Our traditional additional revenue from tax increases is roughly $250,000 for a good ballpark number.
Right.
So we're looking potentially double and then some what our 4% tax increase brings in,
Right.
putting us in a pretty bad spot. So
This helps. The only,
Yeah.
the only concern
Well,
I
it
have,
doesn't make
I
much
actually
sense.
agree with the idea of
It's not.
separating the two systems. I agree with that. I
Yeah.
have a little bit of a problem with part of this resolution because it's talking about separating and making no structural changes. I actually think the timing's wrong. I think my personal preference would be to wait until the state goes through its study of the pension system, because I know there's a lot smarter people out there than I am that have come up with a lot of recommendations on how to help the pension plans do better, so we don't have a 10% increase. My feeling would be to wait until that comes forth. The only part I don't like about this, it says supports maintaining the current structure. It talks about without any structural changes to the plan. I just think that's a little short-sighted when there's so much attention in Frankfurt right now on what kind of changes could be made to the plan. I would hate to see us, it's not going to happen, so I guess it doesn't matter. but I would hate to see CERS pull out before some of those ideas are generated, and CRS might say, yeah, that's a great idea, let's do that, that's gonna help our plan too, and then let's separate from KRS. So the separation doesn't bother me, the timing and the idea of maintaining the current structure concerns me a little bit.
Well, I mean, I can say I am personally in favor of maintaining, you know, the benefits that have been promised to past current
Absolutely.
employees. I think that, I don't know if
It's
that's
all,
what
it's
that means or
future
not.
stuff.
Yeah,
No, I think this means not to change anything with the pension plan, that it stays the same. My
Oh,
feeling
okay.
is that they should be willing to look at potential changes for future employees in CERS, but again, still separate them. I totally agree with that. But the concept of this resolution that says we want to maintain the current structure, I have a little bit of problem with that. Anybody in the system, I think, needs to be treated, no changes. But new people coming in, I think that's where changes could be made to make the system more sustainable. But if you all want to sign this, again, I don't think it's going to change anything. I think the state is planning on reviewing both of them regardless of what we say.
Can I just add to that?
Sure.
They are going to review them both, and to your point, I think it's important that, and this does call for separation with, a consistency to what's being offered, and I think that's important to the cities, because that promise is being made to their employees. Future employees, and whether those changes take place, is all part of the topic of discussion. However, I think the separation and the support of the separation bill allows CRS to control that themselves versus relying on the recommendations that they're going to potentially put into place to support the KERS system, which is in a lot different state than what CRS is. And so all those changes may not equate to what is in the best interest of cities for their pension system long-term.
Okay.
The passage of the resolution, obviously it's at early stages. However, I think, this council's being asked to support it in the concept that it's being presented, because those decisions have to be made really prior to a proposal for, from the legislature or the governor's office as to how they're going to address them. And I think supporting that is supporting the city's best position to control cost when it comes to pension.
I mean, I agree with the mayor that it's a little bit unclear as to what maintaining the current structure and benefits means. I'm not sure that either, but I think the issue really is to separate the systems. I mean, that's what everybody's talking about. So if we want to just modify that a little bit to take out that phrase, maintaining the current structure and benefits, I mean, I'm okay with that. And deal with this.
From this date backwards. I mean, maintain the current systems, but not into the future. Is what the concern would be, I guess. If we're endorsing the way things are now, without saying that, you could leave room for alteration or change in it. That is funny language.
Yeah, it's more like I'm not even quite sure what it means rather than trying to figure out what it means. I mean, again, I'm not hesitant to say personally, everybody that's worked here and is currently working here, that's the deal we had with them. I mean, it's just morally incorrect to try to alter that going back.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a given. There's another paragraph here. It says, like the fifth whereas. It's on an upward funding trajectory, predicts it will be 100% funded by fiscal year 2043 without any structural changes to the plan. Implies they want to make no changes to the plan at all for future employees. Again, I don't think it's that big a deal. If you all want to go ahead and approve it, I'm fine with it. I'm not against it. I just think the whole idea of maintaining the current structure and benefits and making no structural changes is a little short-sighted.
Actually, I read that differently.
I'm sure you do.
Well, we don't. Actually, I think what it's stating is that it would be 100% funded by 2043, even if there were no structural changes.
Oh, okay.
It's
I
saying until.
accept, accept that, okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm
it's
fine.
not-
If
it's
you
not
guys
an
wanna
absolute
approve,
that
that's
there-
okay.
That
Okay.
there would be no structural changes. They're saying even if you left it as is, by 2043, it would be 100%, even without changing any of the benefit
Gotcha.
package.
I
It's not
see.
stating a position on whether or not that should occur. It's actually stating that even if you made no changes to the current system by 2043, it would be 100% funded. I think that's the way I read that statement.
Okay.
And understand.
Which is all just a projection anyway. And
Correct.
I've heard, I don't know, Joe, whether, Ron, whether you've heard this too, that, so this increase that's based on a new actuarial study, I mean, is based on new actuarial study. The prior actuary, after it came out, said, we still stick by our original numbers, which wouldn't require a big increase. So this is all just based on projections.
GLC's really pushing for it, though, aren't they?
Well, and again, I think the fundamental element to this is what's in the best interest of cities.
Right.
And they are supporting it at that level, and I think, you know, the staff position is for protection of our community and our city, this is the best way to manage the pension system. Now, a lot of things will happen between now and then, but I do think supporting the resolution is stating that that is the position of this council and this city, that at this point in time, with what we know, separation is the best protection for our pension system for our employees.
All right, well, I'll move approval, but I, you know, point well taken, I don't know what other folks, very good point that, you know, when you wordsmith stuff down into this kind of detail, when they're just starting and trying to figure out how to do it, doesn't actually make much difference. But if people have a better comfort level, I would just say, you know, in this last sentence, strikes the words, maintaining the current structure and benefits of the, and then take the words county employees retirement system and move it over to where the it is after separating, otherwise the it doesn't refer to anything. So it would read, supports separating the county employees retirement system from the Kentucky retirement systems, and just say that. That's your point, right, Mayor? That way I understood it, so.
I would agree with that.
Okay, so I'll make that motion with that
To
modification.
change it,
Somebody,
modify the language. I'd second.
okay.
Vote on do it all once, or have to vote on the amendment? Have to vote on the amendment?
No, there's
No.
not an amendment, really.
Right.
It's
Just a second
the actual
vote.
resolution, we just marked it up here in the meeting.
Marked it, okay. All those in favor of the, or roll call vote on the resolution, as amended.
Mr. Cameron.
Aye.
Mr. Bowman.
Aye.
Ms. Kelly.
Aye.
Mr. Peterman.
Aye.
Mr. Slaughter.
Aye.
Great, thank you all.
Should we recognize?
Oh, yeah, yeah. We did receive another letter, and I want to recognize personally, there was, at our last council meeting, we recognized people that helped with the sesquicentennial, and there was a group, there were people that left out. One in particular, there was a group of detention center prisoners that Lonnie Sloan coordinated to help clean up everything, and they did an absolutely awesome job, and we failed to mention them at the last meeting. I feel really bad about that, so I wanted to say that publicly, that we appreciate their efforts, so that was great.
And actually, I'll add to that as well. Lonnie has kind of been our point person most recently organizing that group, and we count on them for a number of our events. And so they were very helpful in the sesquicentennial, and also, you know, every time we have larger events, we utilize their service. And he's great because he makes it easy for us to get that help.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
they deserve some recognition. That's great.
Awesome. Anything else to come before council? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Do we want to send